Good afternoon, my name is Alan Gamble. Welcome to another episode of Aussie Box Office Charts, where we'll be taking a look at everything that was charting on the weekend, including the new releases of Captain America, Brave New World, Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy, Nizar 2, and Heart Eyes, all entering the chart. So let's not waste any time, let's get into the top 10 for this weekend. Alright, so for the top 5, Captain America, Brave New World enters the charts at number 1, which was largely expected, but at a gross total substantially less than what I think people might have been expecting in the Aussie market. Enters the chart at number 1 with $5.3 million for a current total of 5.8. At number 2, we have Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy, entering the charts with $4.4 million for a current total of 5.3. Nizar 2 enters the chart at number 3 with a total of $2.3 million. That is the Chinese release that has, I think, made over $1 billion just within the Chinese market. It is one of the highest grossing movies of all time. I think it's in the top 5 by now. But in Australia, it opened with $2.3 million. Heart Eyes at number 4 with $765,000 for a current total of just over $800,000. And sticking around, the only holdover from last week, A Complete Unknown, drops down to number 5. After 4 weeks of release, a 38% hold with another $538,000 for a current total of $6.5 million. So, big elephant in the room, Captain America Brave New World. First off, it did open in top spot for the weekend, so that's something. And that's how I'm seeing it reported in certain news articles. But what I want to do is take a little bit of a deep dive because it's our first MCU movie of the year. It's the first MCU movie that's released while I've been doing this show. So I wanted to take a look to see where this fits in line with all the other Australian openings of MCU movies. $5.3 million opening weekend puts it in, I regret to inform, 31st position out of 35 movies. Because I went back through the entire, right back to 2008, and 31st out of 35 movies, which really isn't good. That puts it alongside Ant-Man from 2015, Thor from 2011, that were both around $5.3 million. However, those are released almost 10 years ago and over 10 years ago, and those numbers are unadjusted for inflation. Captain America Brave New World's opening weekend only beats out Shang-Chi from 2021, The Incredible Hulk from 2008, The Marvels from 2023, and Captain America, The First Avenger from 2011. Again, those numbers unadjusted for inflation. If we take a look at the butts in seats opening weekends, which is the total of opening weekend gross divided by the average ticket price for that year, we get roughly how many people went and saw that movie opening weekend throughout the Australian MCU history. So I was curious, however, it ranked 32nd out of 35 with 313,000 seats. So 313,000 people went and saw that movie. Meaning less people showed up to Brave New World than the opening weekend of practically all other Marvel releases, with it only beating The Incredible Hulk from 2008, which was before there was an MCU, so to speak, with 182,000 seats. The Marvels from 2023 with 172,000 people going to see it opening weekend, and Shang-Chi from 2021 with 127,000 people going to see it opening weekend. However, Shang-Chi is a little bit of a curveball. It's one of the only movies that I just listed that actually ended up doing well at the Australian domestic box office, due to both good word of mouth, but it had 2 months where there was no other major releases. So it ended up doing well just because it was the only big title that was showing in cinemas. And it ended up doing a really good number. I think it was number 1 for 9 weeks in a row back in 2021. So With that example, can Captain America Brave New World repeat a similar feat to save it from being amongst the lowest performing MCU movies in Australian history? We'll have to find out over upcoming weeks. It does have a little bit of leg room where there are no major releases for the next few weeks, so we'll see if it can leg out a little bit. Maybe people want to go to the movies and there's nothing else to see, so they go and see Captain America. But time will tell, and if you are watching this show, you will find out when I find out. But let's move on to the next big story of the week. Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy, the fourth sequel in the Bridget Jones franchise, is the other major release this weekend. A movie that did go straight to streaming in the US, but it did get a theatrical release here in some of the regions. I believe the UK will also have a theatrical release, due to it being a quite English franchise, similar to Paddington Bear. Mad About the Boy appears to be on par with historical performances of the rest of the franchise. It's $4.4 million opening weekend compared to $3.6 million for Bridget Jones's Baby from 2016, but well short of Bridget Jones, The Edge of Reason from 2004 with its $7.2 million opening, and around the original Bridget Jones's Diary from 2001 with $3.9 million. However, it should be noted that those numbers, even beyond the MCU 2008 that we just looked at, the original Bridget Jones's Diary was from 2001. So those numbers are not adjusted for inflation. So if we do a little bit of inflation adjustment, Mad About the Boy would clock in as the lowest, trailing Bridget Jones's Baby with $4.6 million. Bridget Jones's Diary from 2001 would be inflation adjusted $7.2 million, and Edge of Reason from 2004 would be inflation adjusted to $12.4 million. So it's on par, but it's not growing. So I would not expect another sequel to be coming out for this franchise, given its financial track record. Moving on to 6 through 10 for the last weekend. At number 6, we have another new entry, Shavar, with $441,000. A Hindi language film from India, which is a historical biopic epic about a Maratha warrior Shivaji who founded the Maratha kingdom in 17th century India. Being an Indian historical epic biopic, I'm sure it's far more insane than that makes it sound. Dropping down to number 7, we have Baby Girl, $365,000 after 3 weeks of release, a 48% drop with a current total of $2.8 million. We Live in Time sits at number 8 with $293,000 after 5 weeks of release, another 36% drop for a current total of $6.4 million. Mufasa is at number 9 after 9 weeks of release, hanging around with another $249,000 for a current total of $28.1 million. And Conclave hanging around again after 6 weeks of release, another 45% drop with a current total of $6.9 million. Touching on quickly what has dropped out of the weekly top 10. Becoming Led Zeppelin is out after a week. Paddington in Peru finally drops out after 7 weeks. And Sonic the Hedgehog 3 after 8 weeks, with an impressive run for both of those two. Finally, I can whip out a chart that I've been sitting on for all these weeks, but there hasn't been any movement on it the entire year so far. This is the top 5 openings of 2025. So this is when a new release comes out, its opening weekend, how much does it bring in? This is a chart to keep track of just which ones perform really well out of the gate. So currently, Captain America, Brave New World, and Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy, with their this week's openings, take position 1 and 2. The opening of Paddington in Peru from back at the start of the year with $2.9 million puts it in 3rd spot. Nizar 2 from this week with its $2.3 million opening puts it in number 4. And Nosferatu from several weeks ago now, its opening of $2.3 million will be enough for 5th spot. So this is something that we might see change. I might go to a top 10 for top openings, but This is how it sits so far this year, and as we get more of those big blockbusters, this one will be fun to keep track of. And speaking of the massive 3 movies that were in this year's top openings of the year, if we have a quick look at the chart from last week, charting the total domestic grosses per weekend, I was predicting an orange spike, but we got a much more substantial spike than I was expecting, with a total domestic gross this weekend of just over $16 million, which, as you can see there, is far beyond both 2023 and 2022. Can we keep that trend going? Well, I guess we'll find out moving forward. Moving on to 2025's top 10 box office. This is for everything that has released in 2025. We can finally see some movement on this chart, so that's exciting. Paddington in Peru stays at the top with $17.1 million, and Nosferatu at second with $7.9 million. Conclave stays at third with $6.9 million. A Complete Unknown leapfrogs We Live in Time with $6.5 million. We Live in Time dropping down to number 5 with 6.4. Captain America Brave New World's opening total gross is $5.8 million. That's a new entry. Bridget Jones' Mad About the Boy is a new entry at $5.3 million, sitting at number 7. Number 8 goes to Nizar 2, another new entry for $2.9 million. And that drops Baby Girl down to 9th spot with $2.8 million. And Den of Thieves 2 Pantera down to 10th spot with $2.6 million. Dropping out of the top 10 for the year, Wolfman, which also had a course correction of the $4+ million that it randomly had last week. That has been corrected. It is at just over $1.1 million. And subsequently off the top 10. Flight Risk also got bumped down, and The Brutalist is no longer in the top 10 of 2025. Alright, and taking a quick look at what's coming up this week. Theatrically, February 13th, we start off with The Last Showgirl, starring Pamela Anderson, Jamie Lee Curtis, and Dave Bautista from Gia Coppola. We have Bird from Andre Arnold, starring Nikia Adams and Barry Keoghan. Also releasing on February 13th, although you might have to have a little bit of a hunt around to find cinemas that are showing them, we have Legends of the Condor Heroes, The Gallants, which is a big historical fantasy action out of China. And lastly, we have The Monkey from Osgood Perkins, the director of last year's Longlegs, a new horror comedy starring Theo James and Tatiana Maslany. Over on streaming, February 20 gives us Day Zero on Netflix, a 6-episode miniseries about a zero-day commission investigating a devastating cyber attack, starring a huge list of big-name actors with Robert De Niro, Angela Bassett, Jesse Plemons, and Lizzie Kaplan, just to name a few. From the creators, Eric Newman from Griselda and True Story, Noah Oppenheim, the writer of Maze Runner and Allegiant from the Divergent series, and Michael Schmidt, who has no other credits. Could go either way, but I am keen to check it out to see, is it a Mr. Robot type tech show, or is it something more Hollywood that is going to use words that don't make any sense? On February 21, Disney Plus gives us 1,000 Blows, about a pair of best friends on the run from Jamaica that find themselves thrust into the criminal underbelly of London's thriving bare-knuckle boxing scene, from the creator of Peaky Blinders and also the director of Locke. So, at the very least, it should have some vibes down on pat. For returning series, on February 21, Reacher returns with Season 3 over on Amazon, which is one I'm very excited for. Loved Reacher Season 1. Season 2 was still enjoyable, so let's see what they go with Season 3. And Pantheon also migrates over to Netflix on February 21 for Season 2. It did originally release on Amazon, but only in a few certain regions. I believe Oceanic region was included, but nobody watched it. I love Season 1 of this show, so I'm going to tell everyone to watch it. I think it was very high concept, it was really well done, and Hopefully it gets some second wind based on the success of Netflix. If you're curious about a really high concept animated show similar to Ghost in the Shell but starts on a very small scale before gradually ramping up, phenomenal series. At least for season 1. I haven't seen season 2 yet. Alright, and quickly checking over what we watched last week for this Cinechums movie challenge. The theme last week being duos, couples, power couples, crime couples, etc. And we start off with Look Back from 2024, a Japanese anime from writer Tatsuki Fujimoto, most well known for Chainsaw Man, about 2 young friends and their journey with animation and each other growing up. An incredible movie with more heart and soul than a lot of the movies I watched last year. Absolutely worth checking out. Next up was Captain America: Brave New World from 2025, the latest MCU movie, which had multiple mentor-protege relationships unfolding throughout the movie. And you can see my full review of that movie here on the channel. Next up was Nickel Boys from 2024, Best Picture nominated movie from Ramel Ross, about a pair of friends surviving together in a youth detention center back from what would have to be the 50s or 60s, based on historical events and an actual place that was shut down because it was a fairly nasty place in history, to be fair. And lastly was The Gorge from Apple TV 2025, starring Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy, from director Scott Derrickson, who gave us The Black Phone, about a pair of isolated soldiers, each watching and protecting a side of a gorge with a mystery to it, which was fine, if not forgettable. Apple TV slop does tend to be a bit better than anything Netflix churns out, as a general rule, but if you also choose to skip this one, you're not missing too much, but it did fit the theme quite adequately. So that's what I watched last week, and let's take a look at what's coming up next week. Coming up in this week's challenge, we have fabric and clothing as the ultimate theme. So things like fabric or clothing references in the title, like blue velvet or grey flannel suit, clothing or fashion as part of the plot, actors or characters with those names, or what I'm probably going to go with, award-winning costumes, so anything nominated for the Best Costumes category of the Oscars. However, if we jump over to my shortlist, we have a few things that I'm taking a look at. Maybe 12 Years a Slave, because I just watched Nickel Boys, Schindler's List, Ran, Blue Velvet. We have things like Tron, Cool as Ice, and Super Mario Brothers that have those iconic costumes. But yeah, we'll see how we go. That is it for me this week. Tune in next week where we'll be looking at the continued journeys of Captain America and Bridget Jones, as well as any other news or reviews that come across the channel. My top 10 for 2024 is coming out hopefully this weekend once I get the final edits in place. So that will be exciting. That one has proven to be a little bit more work than I expected, but stick around and you can catch that one, as well as things like the Cinechums link is in the description below if you want to join us for that challenge. But anyway, that's it from me. See ya. Bye.